Yo, it's your boy Vegabomber, and welcome to Vegabomber Land. So you know what we're doing. We're talking Luke Cage, and now episodes 3 and episodes 4. So as you know, I'm doing them 2 at a time to try to keep up with it all. This series definitely has me going. Netflix has done a good job with this again. Right now, I'm still favoring the Get Down just a little bit more, but it's a close race, neck and neck. So let's talk about it. Episode 3. Episode 3 is entitled Who's Gonna Take the Weight? I love the idea that you now have Domingo, who's showing back up, who's the guy the Latin drug dealer, if you will, or the Latin enforcer, if you will, who steps to Cottonmouth and says, hey man, thought you had this taken care of. You know, what's up? Who's gonna take the weight for all of this? Which kind of goes back into that title. And so you see this big standoff between Domingo and Cottonmouth. And I loved it because I mean, it was the typical, I'm going to be violent to you and disrespectful to you without even throwing a punch. And that's exactly what happens. So the scene that I'm talking about is when Domingo comes in to Cottonmouth's awesome nightclub. You know, the floors have been cleaned. I mean, this place is immaculate because this is something that Cottonmouth has a lot of pride in, is this particular club. And then the way Domingo comes in, even short of stature, but still standing tall on confidence. He just pulls out those Snicker bars and starts eating them, and then he throws the wrapper on the floor, and then he starts to eat another one, and he doesn't even eat all the Milky Way, not Snickers, but Milky Way. He doesn't even eat all the Milky Way bar. He just eats some of it, and then he throws it right on the floor, and throws a wrapper right on the floor. So he's basically saying, "Yeah, go ahead. Now what? I'm disrespecting you in your own place." And Cottonmouth is thinking about it because he knows he has to be strategic about everything he does. He just can't go buck wild. He's been doing that. It doesn't work, and that's why his cousin's been getting on him. You know, Mariah Dillard has been trying to tell him, like, yo, you need to calm down on some of this. You got to be smart about how you handle these situations. So that standoff between Domingo and Cottonmouth is probably my favorite part of this episode. My other favorite scene in this particular episode is also when Luke Cage goes in and storms the Crispus Attucks building. It's awesome. So what we're told in this particular episode is that the most fortified place in the hood where Cottonmouth can keep his money and anything else that he wants to store that's precious to him is in this one building, because there's one way in, one way out. It's got concrete walls, and it's just fortified. And he has about 50, 60 guys that are just waiting to break your neck if you try to go in there. And that's what he has. And so this is what Luke Cage has to go in and take all these dudes out. So we finally get to see, like what we saw in the last 8 minutes of the first episode, we get to see another time where Luke Cage goes ahead and goes in there and wrecks shop, and he does. So I love it. He tears off that car door, walks in there. People are shooting at him. People are trying to jump him. People are trying to come from all these angles. They're bringing machetes. They're bringing everything at this guy to no avail, because Luke Cage, you know, strong man and that impenetrable skin makes him like Teflon Don. He's not afraid to walk up in there, and he does. He just walks through them bullets like Superman. And so it was pretty cool to see that. I love the fact that they had a Wu-Tang Clan song, Bring the Ruckus. I love the fact that they had that going, because that's kind of like a good backdrop to what he was doing. But the only part about that scene, I would say, was that I just felt like when he was throwing people, when he was grabbing people, it just didn't seem very realistic. Like, so far, Daredevil's been pretty grounded, and Jessica Jones has been pretty much grounded, except for when she goes jumping. You know that she can't really do that. But at any rate, just seeing him just touching dudes and just kind of barely throwing them and just trying to illustrate his power, but at the same time, it just kind of looked a little bit cheesy. It would have been nicer to see them kind of show a more real-world example of how he would have used his power there. But again, I get it. It's a comic book TV series, so, you know, what the heck, right? That's just what they're going to do. So that was kind of episode 3. Who's going to take the weight? Now, let's talk about episode 4. Episode 4 is titled Step Into the Arena, which is one of my favorite, once again, one of my favorite Gangstar albums, and it's actually a good song as well. And this is basically the Cage backstory. So now what we get is a flashback as to telling us a little bit more about the origin of Luke Cage, which we learned that his name was Carl Lucas first, before he changes his name to Luke Cage. And then we learn why he changes his name to Luke Cage, where he gets that from. So that's pretty interesting to me. And it was mentioned before by Cottonmouth. He said, Luke, biblical name, you know. But now we get the real reasoning, and they tell us why he did that, and I thought that was pretty good. So now what we get is an episode that looks a lot like The Wire in a lot of ways, but you get to see Luke Cage with hair. He looks like a totally different dude almost with the hair and the big fro. I mean, he just looks even bigger for some reason with all that going on. And so I noticed there's a couple of dudes in this particular scene that were actually in Straight Outta Compton. In Straight Outta Compton, you remember there was a dude who threatens Jerry Heller, you know? Well, one of those guys is actually in this episode. So the guy that threatens Jerry Heller in Straight Outta Compton is actually in this episode. I noticed him as one of the inmates who tuned him up, him and Shades. And so now we get to find out about Shades too. Like, what's Shades' deal? Now the thing about Shades though is he's not convincing to me. I don't know what it is. He seems like he could be the guy who's cocky and smart and wise and all that stuff. But buying him as a dude who could really wreck shop and tear somebody up with his hands, I just don't see him being that way. He just doesn't come off as somebody who I would fear who would be nice with his hands. I just don't get that from him. But at any rate, basically episode 4, that's what it's doing. It's just trying to tell you how he met Reva in the first place and how they end up becoming an item, and then how he ends up getting out of jail. We see how. We still don't know exactly everything about why he was put in jail. It looks like it was a setup or something, but I'm sure they got several more episodes to let us know how that happened. But this one just count it as an origin story, a flashback, going back, seeing more about Luke Cage's life before now. And I would say this is a pretty good episode. So far, all these episodes are hitting the mark. I'm liking them. I'm still waiting for that breakout episode, though, because I feel like they're just teetering on greatness. And the lead up is pretty good, but I want to see that episode that just makes me go, ah, you know, just like in the Get Down. Clearly, the last episode, episode 6, just gave you that punch, you know, that made you go, yes, this is the deal. I know exactly what I'm watching. So that's it for now. I need to go ahead and watch 5 and 6. I'll turn the camera back on and talk about that. This is your boy Vegabomber, and I'm out. You.